This is 1,148 days since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. Let me just check on Facebook to see if I'm on. Okay, it says I'm live. And yeah, I can hear. I'll turn things down. All right, everybody. We have received intel after intel after intel, and I probably should have named this live stream Who's Who in Richard's Code Red on steroids case. Um, and I don't think anybody that has been paying attention to this case on, a pretty frequent basis does not hesitate to agree with us that this is a Code Red on steroids case. Yesterday, we received access to records and files that confirmed that Richard was being set up. This I'll share with you more after we put it all together. We don't have a large staff. We are not funded by trillions of dollars. So we have to go through all of this information that has been given to us in order to share it with you. It's so upsetting to think about what we're reading, to see that Richard was set up right from the beginning, um, and that his own chain of command, all the way up, y'all. Chain of command. I mean, never ever forget that a 4-star general, more than one 4-star general, General McConville, General Garrett, General Mealy, that these generals participated, especially General McConville, because we talked to him on the phone. I talked to General Garrett on the phone also, kind of yelled at him a little bit at the beginning because of the frustration with Marlon Soto. But they staged a fake. It wasn't a fake. They staged a meeting and called it Task Force Find Richard Halliday without an op board, without being in uniform. What and and I always say without an op board, and I don't explain myself, and I should explain. An op board is an operational order. The Army doesn't do anything without an order. And in this case, an operational order. It means plans. Plans. Who is going to do what? When do they have to report? When will the next meeting be? Who will look into the criminal activity in the unit? Who will look into the criminal activity of associations with El Paso? Who's going to look into the VA? Who's going to look at Park University? Who's going to look at Juarez? Who's going to look at the JAG? Who's going to look at the Red Rio Range? Who's going to look at Clint, Texas? Who's going to look at, um, you know, over and over, over and over. You have to have a plan, and you have to have organization, and you have to give after action reports. And for Task Force Find Richard Halliday, there was no operational order because it was a staged event. And it costs the taxpayers a lot of money. And the funds that have been allocated to Richard's case are astronomical. We're talking millions of dollars to cover this up. Why? Do we have double agents? This is why we say who's who in Richard's code red case because double agents, those that absolutely have so much to lose or know someone that has so much to lose, have put themselves in a criminal situation as an accessory to crimes over these last 3 years. Um, have they done it just on their own? Have they been paid? These are all things that we need to know because we absolutely know that there's double agents, people that come in and they smooth schmooze the family of a missing soldier to try to get information to see what do they know, what do they know, um, and and then they uh, go and stab you in the back. They betray you. It's not enough that the agencies betray you. Um, and then, and then they'll call you crazy if you said, "Oh, we were betrayed. We were betrayed." And then they say, "Oh, you're crazy." It's the same thing. That's why I am a huge Donald Trump supporter. Huge. Because the same techniques, it's the devil's game. They use the same techniques over and over. They come in, they like Romney, schmoozing. I'll never forget that. And I call, this El Paso all the way to Colonial Juarez, all the way up to Utah, this whole area. I call it Romney land. Romney land. Um, and Romney absolutely could help in this case. The LDS could absolutely help in this case because they have that much influence in that whole area. They could be the shining light, the LDS and Romney. And I remember Romney schmoozing to be Secretary of State um, with President Trump, and then he betrays him. He was always betraying him. And this is the thing you've seen over and over and over again is is people just not being authentic, not being trustworthy, because they're double agents. They have a different agenda than what they say that they do, and their oaths don't mean anything to them. Because General McConville, if he wanted to look for Richard, he could have absolutely found Richard. So easy. So easy. We have WhatsApp. We have Snapchat. We have Google Maps. We have the unit. The unit knows. Matter of fact, I need to put that up there because the unit absolutely knows. And the names on the unit roster is getting longer and longer. And their connections. Who's who? Who's who and who knew what and who did what and who was where is um is all filling in. It's all filling in. And it's pretty shocking. Um because you're going to know a lot of these names. And where did they end up? Where did they end up? Is also shocking. So I'm going to. I think this is a little bit premature to do the who's who. I want to talk about Leilani Hart, of course, because Leilani Hart it seems to be um, well connected to all the who's who. I mean, she's a busy woman. She's a very busy woman. She's connected to Thomas Kane, who's connected to the security, the surveillance footage, right? Is connected to all the passes that are granted for people going in and off post, who absolutely participated in, I believe, the unlawful granting of passes of young party girls during the COVID lockdown onto Fort Bliss to go in and party. And they don't party 6 feet apart, y'all, not with masks on. They don't do that. So, um, so Thomas Kane absolutely committed crimes right then and there. And he's teaching criminology over at Park University, and also is I think he was responsible for their security. Now, that's putting every soldier service member that attends Park University in danger. And our largest by landmass military installation in danger by having someone compromised have authority and the position of the chief of security of Fort Bliss, of the Department of Emergency Services. This is something we have to wrap our heads around and realize that the very people that are supposed to be um, defending us in the Department of Emergency Services or the chief of security is compromised. Absolutely. Leilani Hart is compromised with him. And Ogle is compromised with him. A student. Well, Leilani Hart was a student. Another student was compromised with him. And it goes on and on. And he's a professor. And that's a no-no. And he's married. And he's married on top of that. And they're up to no good. They're up to no good. That I'm getting into the who's who here. But I want to talk about Leilani Hart because she's connected with him while she's having an affair with Tavita Nusa at the CID, which Thomas Kane is CID. I think he's under that umbrella or works very closely with the CID. Of course he does. So right then and there is very concerning to the safety and well-being of every service member that works on Fort Bliss when they're that compromised. So you have Park University, you have the security of Fort Bliss, you have the CID. And of course, JAG. I mean, he works so close to JAG that he could write a letter saying that JAG was working outside of the law. No packets, no investigation before they take any kind of serious action against somebody. Can you imagine? They just don't like you, so they can take serious action against you. I mean, that's very dangerous. They don't like you, so are we going to have like another genocide? I don't like you. I don't like what you believe in. I don't like whatever. So I don't have to have any investigation. I can just gather you up and put you on trains and take you to a camp. I mean, this is the beginning, this kind of thinking. It is so dangerous. And that's why we have to stand up against it. So you have now CID, you have Park University, you have JAG operating outside of the law, not having to do any kind of investigation. And then you have the VA. And Leilani Hart is connected to the VA. And she's connected to the JAG also. Because don't forget, she's connected to the media. El Paso Matters. And, they've spent millions of dollars covering this up. Why? Because of Leilani Hart? I don't believe that at all. But I think Leilani Hart works hard, and so she's in the middle of all of this. up to no good. She works hard on being evil. She works hard on betraying God. She works hard on betraying the creation, our environment. Don't forget, I have talked to people that say she destroys the entire environment on a military installation. The entire environment is brutalized, polluted because of her harassment, her absolute insanity, her craziness, her allegations. I mean, you have to put up a camera so you can go and get your mail, because otherwise Leilani Hart might accuse you of something at the mailbox. I mean, this is how crazy. So not only JAG, not only Park University, not only El Paso Matters, not only the VA, all kinds of, can you imagine there in the CID and the security and the JAG and now the VA? All of those files, all of that information, all of that to blackmail people, to manipulate people, to steal from, absolutely steal from. That, and then of course there's the Van Buren house. There's the Van Buren connection. And now the Van Buren connection uh, with the plane connection. So a plane is involved. Did they think about how his family would find the truth? You need a task force. They didn't know his mom, brave, smart, strong woman, and his father, grandfather, military. Yeah, I just, and I think it's like standard operating procedure for them. They've gotten away with it so many times. And they put out these false narratives, lies and lies. Um, and I think it's very criminal. Uh, and don't forget the double agents. Most of the people that are very angry with me now um, were schmoozing and everything. They have no right to be angry. I was totally forthright with them every time and kind. If I wasn't kind, because I'm sure they're double agents, I'm sure they would have a record of it and report it. And not only was I kind, I was grateful to every one of them. Grateful. They're the ones that are betraying. They're the ones that have something very, very important to lose, something very big to lose by finding the truth about Richard. I'm ready to hear about Richard. They're not. They're not. Because Richard was code redded. It's code red on steroids. He was set up. He was set up even in January. I'm going to tell you, those records confirm that he was set up. And I'm going to go step by step through that in one of the live streams once we get through all of the information. But I will tell you this, it absolutely, just flipping through it, he was set up. And you know that because he never pled guilty and they dismiss the case. They wouldn't dismiss the case for a missing soldier. They don't do that. So it's very clear that there were a lot of double agents at the beginning, and of course, you know, the millions of dollars they've spent on this case to cover it up instead of finding Richard speaks volumes. They had a sweet deal going on at Fort Bliss, a sweet deal, and it involved a plane. Of course, it involved a van. Of course, um, it involved a house. It involved and things that are, um, I think, will bring it all together for people because everything's connected, and you're going to be like, oh, okay. When we do the who's who, and the setup. So we'll confirm. But right now, I can tell you the who's who is Leilani Hart. I can tell you the who's who is James Hart. I can tell you the who's who is Dallas Hart. I can tell you Dallas Hart, absolutely connected to Delta Battery 143. Absolutely. I can tell you that it involves Thomas Kane, the chief of security of Fort Bliss. I can tell you it involves Park University, which means it involves Anna Ogle, Anna Whitehead, and it involves James Hart at the VA and Amber Chase, who we're still waiting for the clarification. Does she sit next to? Does she work next to? Does she work projects with James Hart at the VA using our service members' files, having access to our service members' files, records? That's very concerning. And how do these people get into these positions? Well, I know this for a fact because I'm 30 years. My husband was in the army, and my dad, and so I know that there was always a problem. That hiring is a problem. If you are a disabled veteran, it doesn't matter. You get to jump up front, and you get to jump over those that are more qualified for the position than you are. And they will hire a lesser qualified person just because they are a disabled veteran. And it all sounds noble. It all sounds noble. But think about it. It is a slippery slope. It is a moral hazard. Because then we have unqualified people working with access to our military service members' sensitive health records and military records. And it makes the whole system ripe for criminality, for compromise. Not only that, it hurts every disabled veteran. It hurts every veteran. Because then you have the fraud, the waste and abuse opportunity. It's called a moral hazard, where you say, oh, wow, let me just be a disabled veteran then. Let me just be a disabled veteran, and I'll, and if you have someone working right there at the Disabled Veterans Health Board determining what your percentage is on disability, and they're willing to, for favors, I'm just saying this is a moral hazard, to take favors for getting disability percentages, right? Raise them up, raise them up. And then that goes on for years, and then you finally go, oh, yeah, I can give you 100%. We're getting, no one's checking, no one cares. The disabled veterans are protected. Why are they protected? Because we don't touch that subject, because we support our veterans. And so there's not much scrutiny there. And because there's not much oversight or scrutiny in the Veterans Affairs for disabled veterans, because we love our veterans, because there's not the scrutiny, the fraud is allowed to go in like a Trojan horse and steal from the American people in the name of disabled veterans. And control. Because just think, if you're giving away disability paychecks, so to speak, disability percentage points, and you're coaching, because this is what Leilani was saying, that James Hart was coaching. Now, I don't know if that's true. It needs to be investigated. But it sure did bring the topic into thought. Could this be possible, that people are so low, that people are so heartless to take advantage of our programs that are geared to help disabled veterans? And the answer is yes. The moral hazard is there. And it gives people that are afraid, that are desperate, that it trips them. You know how Jesus says, don't put a stumbling block in front. You rather just put a millstone around your neck and throw yourself in the abyss. Do not put a stumbling block in front of my children, because that's a moral hazard. That's a moral hazard. And you're teaching them to say, you're coaching them. Can you imagine if a person is coaching a perfectly healthy person, a perfectly able person, to act like an imbecile, to act like, a criminal? So that they can take away the benefits of other disabled veterans? That's, oh, yeah, I'll just kind of act really silly and everything and say I'm disabled. It's such a slap in the face to all of our veterans, of all of our disabled veterans. And are you telling me that Lindsey Graham is shutting the door on Fine Richard Halliday's case and not looking into Leilani Hart's reports of this going on in the VA there at El Paso? Are you telling me that Representative Timmons is shutting the door in Fine Richard Halliday's face and not caring that every disabled veteran is being taken advantage of, possibly, in the El Paso Veterans Affairs Office for Disability, and that perfectly healthy people are being taught how to be a criminal, and not only that, hurting their own selves, because to be PTSD is subjective. So we'll teach people how to be PTSD so they can get disability. I mean, this is what Leilani Hart was alluding to. So not only is she reporting the worst in her family, the incest in her family, the pedophilia in her family, the sexual assault of a 7-year-old in her bedroom in her family, the illegal purchase of weapons in her family, in her household, the threats of bodily harm. It's as simple as that. She said it's as I can just shoot you at nighttime. It's as simple as that. You'll never wake up. Um, and to put in fear of her immigration status, so even the immigration status is questionable. I mean, and now she's reporting that there are real problems in the Veterans Affairs, what is it, DEPDES? Anyway, it's the Disabled Veterans System, and now we're asking the question: Is Amber Chase working next to James Hart there? Because let me tell you, how did Amber Chase get that job? Is she a disabled veteran? How did she get that job? She's absolutely vile and vulgar. And if she doesn't have a heart for a missing soldier who she apparently knows a lot about, how is she going to have a heart for disabled veterans? I just see that she's not qualified. She's not qualified for that job. And who else is working in that office? Who else is working in that office taking advantage of disabled veterans by impersonating them, by stealing who they are, their identities, and then also actually stealing social security numbers, stealing identities, actually doing it. You got the pretenders. Let me coach you how to pretend so you can get these disability checks. I mean, this is what Leilani Hart is telling us. And now, what are we to believe? Because she has this long history of lying. Does she lie all the time? Is she lying about this? And shouldn't Senator Ted Cruz, who has oversight, shouldn't Representative Veronica Escobar do that congressional inquiry and add the Veterans Affairs, the Hart family's criminal little syndicate cabal in all of this? I mean, shouldn't they question it? And in regards to Richard's disappearance, in regards to Richard's code red into the setting up of Richard, into what's going on at Van Buren, who owns Van Buren? How can that be connected? Is that connected to Boleyn? I mean, is there a connection? Because if Richard's being set up, Boleyn was part of that. And don't tell me Boleyn is not taking orders from somebody. So there's a lot of dangerous stuff going on. A lot of dangerous stuff because it's huge fraud. Huge fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'm here to tell you that we absolutely have a lot of information to suspect that what is going on Fort Bliss is a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse and criminality. A lot of callous criminality against our veterans, against our active duty service members, against their families, against the American people. And you're telling me that Lindsey Graham doesn't care? That Lindsey Graham doesn't want to hear? That Senator Ted Cruz doesn't, well, Senator Ted Cruz never shut the door on us. I think he cares, but he has to figure it all out. How to get his power back as senator. Maybe Lindsey Graham doesn't have power because the senators have been, you know, disarmed. And Representative Timmons doesn't care about our disabled veterans, about our active duty veterans, our active duty service members, about a missing soldier that now more and more information. And I have to tell his man said, don't say his unit knows. Let me tell you, his unit knows. And we have evidence that his unit knows. And it's more than that his unit knows. It's more than that. Richard was code redded. I don't know if that's a word. That's my word for it. He was code redded on steroids. And his unit knows. Absolutely. And so are you saying that Ms. Kucherga doesn't care to report on this? Right there in her backyard? Right there in such close proximity to Leilani Hart, a convicted criminal? And she doesn't want to report on disabled veterans being taken advantage of? The American system for disabled veterans being taken advantage of? I mean, she was very concerned about the Combined Veterans Association. And where are the veterans there? Where are the veterans there? Don't they care? Don't they care? Not everything is worth the money. And, there are like 3 ways to get rich. You inherit it, you earn it, or you steal it. And there seems to be a lot of stealing. Stealing from the American people. Stealing from our military. Stealing from our veterans, our active duty service members. Stealing from disabled veterans. And there seems to be a plane involved. A plane. We have located a plane. We have located the van. So a van, a plane. Now I have to look in to see if there's a boat involved in this. Really. But we're talking about the desert. So, but that's how crazy this is. Is there a boat? I mean, where does the cargo go? I'll never forget the movie Sound of Freedom, where they put the children in the tactical move storage unit and just locked them in and put them on a ship, right? On a boat. What else is in these storage units? uh, these tactical move storage units. And, we give the military everything that they want. So, if everything is about fraud, it's ripe for picking. The military's ripe for picking. They've got the weapons, they've got the ammunition, they've got the tactical move storage unit, they've got the parts, the all kinds of parts, all kinds of equipment. They've got the beautiful young volunteer sons and daughters of our country. They've got them. Let's give them $25,000 enlistment bonus and let's put together a business plan to take advantage of them. Let's bring in some young party girls. Let's give them access, even if it's COVID lockdown. And who knows what they're bringing into these parties. So, and then the gun issue. If the barracks, and we know this for a fact, it has been confirmed that the barracks, all, all of Fort Bliss, that's what they told us. We said his barracks were flush with weapons, and they confirmed to us it wasn't just Richard's barracks, it was all the barracks on Fort Bliss. What does that tell you? That there's a weapons problem on Fort Bliss. And this last report from a couple months ago that, they were giving some of them immunity or whatever from getting in trouble when they did an emergency search. And they found a couple dogs. Didn't they find a dead snake? They found all kinds of weapons. How many of those weapons were registered? They tried to, they were setting Richard up so much, and they were, going through everything that he did, and they, trying to pin some kind of crime on him, and he was clean. And even David Park had to say he was clean. He was clean. They couldn't find anything wrong, and he was upset about that. He was upset that he had a good soldier. He was upset that Richard, they couldn't find anything on him. So what does that tell you? We have that letter. And it's proof that he was being set up. It's proof that he was being set up to be code redded, retaliated against, and that they wanted to retaliate against him. It's clear. Read the letter. It's on, I posted it on Find Richard Halliday. Read it. He even quotes, Darth Vader. I mean, it is. And he doesn't even address Rob. And this is a West Pointer, y'all. This is a West Pointer contributing to a code red of one of his soldiers. The bullying, the harassment, the weaponization of his power, the abuse of his power. That's what that is. Very clear. And I haven't even started with Michael Roddick, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Roddick, and Clem Coward. Because how is Leilani Hart related to David Park? Right there, his captain, who collaborated on many different military, what do you call them? Military exercises with First Lieutenant Dallas Hart. Of course, the First Lieutenant platoon leader is going to collaborate with the captain. Of course. But it's also noteworthy that they have some other things in common. So not only is Leilani Hart connected to Delta Battery 143, is connected to the JAG, is connected to the CID, is connected to the VA, is connected to Park University. Is she connected to the IG? Is she connected to Van Buren? Is she connected to the white van? Is she connected to the plane? This is, I mean, it gets so convoluted, but we're trying to focus on Leilani because she seems to bring some order to the chaos because she's connected to it all. She's connected. So it's easy to understand. Um, she's calling it out and is part of it. She's confessing and is still covering. It's pretty schizophrenic because I've invited her on here to give her side of the story, and you know, and with, she can take a lie detector, I can take a lie detector. Dallas Hart, all he has to do is produce his orders to whatever unit that he thinks that, he wants to belong to, with whatever, they use so many different identities, but he just has to produce his orders. That's all he has to do. Or they have to produce the first lieutenant platoon leader of Delta Battery 143. But we have witnessed testimony that Dallas Hart was the platoon leader, the first lieutenant in Delta Battery 143. 143. And he keeps saying, no, I wasn't. Okay. All right. Change my mind. Where's your orders? All right. And James Hart saying, oh no, I'm not working with Amber Chase. And Amber Chase could say, I'm not working at the VA and with other people. And no, I'm not messing with disabled veterans benefits. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not leveraging control over veterans by offering them or threatening to deny them their due veterans benefits. I mean, that's a very powerful position because you have people's livelihoods, you have people's records, sensitive records in your control. And, so you would think that the scrutiny to get that job would be very, very tough. Not eligible for disabled veterans the point system, the 10-point system or whatever. Because look, we need the best people, the most qualified, the most vetted in those positions, don't we? I mean, we are dumbing down our most sensitive positions. And I don't want to say that disabled vets are dumbing down. I'm not saying that. If a disabled veteran is totally qualified, they should get the job. But we've had this problem for years and years. I know about it. That people that are very qualified for positions in our government employment have been overlooked or set aside for the 10-point system, and put someone in there that is not as capable, not qualified for that job. And I think that is a real danger to our entire government system because it opens it up for the fraud. It's a moral hazard, and it has nothing to do with um, and I have to say this over and over again. It is not demeaning to disabled veterans. If that disabled veteran is qualified, they should get that job on their own merit. On their own merit. And I know, oh, but they're disabled. Well, a big part of disability, and people don't understand this because a few years ago they put in this PTSD, the mental illness, and it's very subjective, but it's so dangerous because people will, uh, have that moral hazard. They will try to fake it, and that faking it will mean they go to the hospital. They might even take some of the medication that they're given to fake it, and then that messes with them and it puts their own mental health in danger. So someone that comes in there, a veteran that comes in there that is totally mentally well, because of the fraud, because of the moral hazard, it makes them sick. And we're not looking into that. We don't have oversight to that. And it's because they want that 10-point advantage so that they can get the job. And I don't know if a lot of American people know about this. And they say, why is that person in that job and they're not even qualified? They don't know what they're doing. And I'm all about taking care of our disabled veterans. All about that. But, there is no taking care of our disabled veterans if our country, if our government agencies are falling apart. If they're all falling apart, how are we going to take care of our own, including our disabled veterans? If our dollar is falling apart, if our veteran affairs is falling apart, if our JAG system is falling apart, if our universities are falling apart, if our military is falling apart, and we have these warmongers, because both Lindsey Graham and William Timmons are both always wanting to go to war, right? Because it's very profitable. Um, but they don't care about our veterans. They don't care about vetting our system. They don't care about vetting our employees. They don't care about scrutinizing the whole Veterans Affairs disability benefits. That's very concerning to me. Very concerning. And you can ask, what does this have to do with Richard? Well, because there was this huge circle of compromise and criminality. It reached into Delta Battery 143 where Richard was. It reached into Park University where Richard was. It reached into the CID where Richard was. It reached into the VA, which, considering the setup and his chaptering, I'm sure he had to go over to the VA to be chaptered out, part of the chaptering process. And, so everywhere he was going, it was a criminal, compromised cabal. And so it's, yeah, a lot wrong on Fort Bliss. A lot wrong. And I think there's a lot wrong on other institution on other military installations also. But I know for sure there's a lot wrong on Fort Bliss. And that's why we need this congressional inquiry. That's why we need Major General James Eisenhower to act swiftly, swiftly, especially in the JAG. He can start with the JAG. Demand reports, demand justice, demand restitution. Absolutely. So, and with these new Who's Who reports, um, I just think, it's going to be so blatant, that what's going on at Fort Bliss, that people are going to have to start taking notice. And when people start taking notice, then of course, and I don't even know if we need the mainstream media. It would be nice. It would be a quick way. But I think we just need word of mouth. This is how we need to do it. And, I've never paid a dime to get a follower. Maybe I need to start doing that to extend the platform. But, you know, I I just thought, look, I'm ready to hear about my son. I want to know where he's at. These institutions, these agencies need to do their duty and help us find Richard. So I kept it close to home. Our only recourse has been Team Find Richard Halliday. And this podcast is security, y'all. It's security. Because we're talking about human trafficking. We're talking about child sex trafficking. We're talking about child pornography. We're talking about weapon smuggling. We're talking about ammunition smuggling. We're talking about equipment smuggling. We're talking about Social Security fraud. We're talking about veterans' disability fraud. We're talking about forgery. We're talking about identity theft. We're talking about, just so many. Uh, I can go on and on of all the crimes that are, being alleged in the code red of Richard Halliday. The tampering of witnesses, the retaliation against a whistleblower, the tampering of evidence, the tampering of surveillance footage, the cover up, the tampering with the files, scrubbing the files, sanitizing the files, the smear campaign on Richard. I mean, there you can go on and on, on and on. The JAG themselves harassing, threatening. The JAG threatened us, okay? The JAG threatened us. And so we're working on that right now, too. And the unanswered open records requests. Where's the CPS files? So, that's why when it all comes together, they've made it so much worse. And this is all connected to a lawyer, y'all, to an attorney. An attorney has been directing all of this also because, of course, they've had to give an operational order for how to cover up Richard's case from a legal perspective. So, so there's many attorneys, sorry, and we also have a judge not our officer of the court, but a different judge that is, and then of course Judge Robert Shook. I mean, it's so obvious to anyone that's paying attention that they have something big to hide because they're putting in a lot of effort to hide it. So, do you think it would be good to contact Tim Scott? He wants to be a hero right now to help him rise to the top. He's a good guy. Perhaps he would care about Richard and get involved. I'm thinking about if we contacted Tim Scott. I'll ask Rob if he contacted Tim Scott. Yeah, I wrote that down. So, yeah, uh, you know, the heroes. I don't know if any of you studied any kind of Shakespeare at all. They kind of have taken it out of school. Um, they haven't done it justice as far as making movies so much. There's some older movies, but they talk about who's the hero, the unlikely um, Dogberry, right? Dogberry, the guy that seems like he couldn't tie his shoes, but he's the one that figures it all out. He's the one that becomes the hero. It's always this unlikely character that becomes the hero, that becomes the shining light. And, it's not like these people that you would think would save the day. And so we have taken a lesson out of that, and we try to not make any presumptions. We try to reach out to everybody. We reached out, of course, to some of these double agents, and um, anyone that wanted to help us, anyone that uh, wanted to go to the press for us or whatever. We were very mindful to be very grateful and uh, not think that they couldn't be the hero. Because you never know. You never know who's going to bring forth that little bit of information that will just crack the case. But absolutely, the unit knows, um, and will it'll happen. It'll happen. We have faith that it will happen. I mean, look how far we've come. It's just amazing. Um, I remember walking the bridges. I remember standing on the corners in El Paso. I remember and thinking about how far we've come from there. That we know who's who, partially, partially, because there's a lot of double agents. This was millions of dollars to cover this up. So also, I did want to mention this. One of the attorneys in the Walmart case, I think 49 years old, he died yesterday, which is really concerning for us. Um, and just keep that in mind. Put that in your pocket. Put that in your pocket. I wanted to mention that. And it's all going to come together. Um, so, right now, we're looking into this plane. We're looking into the van. The van has the OnStar GPS, which is, and it has some other things. It has some other things too. Um, and of course, the Van Buren issue and all the connections of who's who. And that's coming together. Where things from years ago, research that we did years ago, was really important because when you read through certain names and certain events, with that research, some names jump out. Some research, some information jumps out. And it's like, oh my gosh, oh yeah, let me connect the dots. And you go back, you look at your notes. So, for any parent, for any loved one that's going through something like this, you have to record everything, keep a journal, write everything down, do things daily because it just, I'm thinking about all the screenshots that I've missed that I need to go back and reread because information that didn't mean anything to us a year ago or 2 years ago would probably mean something to us now. And that has really helped. The screenshots from years ago have really helped. And, you know, so thank you for sending those to us. So many people have given us so much evidence. Team Fire Richard Halliday, you're awesome. Thank you. And Rob says, don't forget to tell them that we love them. We love them for sticking with us for so long and helping us find Richard. And we're going to find Richard. We're going to do it. And it's going to be a doozy, y'all, um, because we want accountability too. We want accountability. Uh, and the reason why we want accountability is not to be vengeful, um, but because we need to set a precedence to these leaders that have weaponized our gifts to them, our support to them, our trust in them against our own volunteer sons and daughters, that they have betrayed us, um, and and they didn't do their duty. And so, yeah, we need, and this, I'm talking about those that are involved in no good in Richard's case. I'm not saying that they're all up to no good. I'm just saying those that are up to no good in Richard's case, we want accountability. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. God bless you, and I will be back